You'd think basketball is basketball, right? 10 players, two hoops, one ball. But it turns out the game played in the NBA and the game played across the Atlantic in Europe, well, they're almost like two different sports. It's a tale of two worlds, shaped by different rules, different cultures, and really just different ideas about how you win a game. Wow, I mean, when a legend like Kobe Bryant says something that strong, you kind of have to stop and listen. Taught the game the right way, something we really have to fix. So, what exactly was he seeing that maybe the rest of us miss? He saw a fundamental split in how players are developed, and it starts long before they ever get near a pro court. And that's exactly what we're going to break down. So, to really get this, we have to start at the very foundation, the rulebook. And trust me, these aren't just minor little tweaks here and there. These rules are like the code, the very DNA that shapes what the game looks and feels like. Okay, let's just look at some of the big ones. Right off the bat, the NBA game is 8 minutes longer. That doesn't sound like a ton, but it totally changes player energy, rotations, the whole flow. Then there's the three-point line. It's closer in Europe, which completely changes the spacing of the floor. And get this, you only get 5 fouls in international play before you're out, not 6. That means players have to be way more careful on defense. But those are the differences you can easily spot. There's another rule, a much more subtle one, that exists in the NBA but not in Europe. And this one single rule completely changes the geometry of the court and the flow of the offense. It's called the defensive 3-second violation. Now, it sounds technical, but it's super simple. In the NBA, a defender can't just set up camp in the paint and wait for someone to come to them. They have to be actively guarding an opponent, or they have to get out. But in European basketball, under FIBA rules, that rule doesn't exist. So what does this actually mean on the court? Well, it's a game changer. In Europe, a team's biggest player can just park in the paint, creating a defensive wall that makes it incredibly tough to drive to the hoop. It really rewards pure size. But in the NBA, that lane has to stay open. This creates these massive runways for explosive, athletic players to just attack the rim. And that right there is a huge reason the games look so incredibly different. Okay, so we've covered the rules. Now let's talk about the art that those rules create. Because we're not just talking about different tactics here. We're talking about two distinct forms of basketball. You can think of one as a disciplined, coordinated symphony, and the other as a brilliant improvisational jazz solo. And I think this quote from coach Nikolai Gospodinov just nails it. He says, European basketball is all about the collective, intricate systems, moving the ball, finding the best shot for the team. American basketball, it often comes down to empowering one individual superstar to just create magic. And you don't have to just take his word for it. The data tells the exact same story. Just look at this chart. It's showing assists per 100 possessions. Now focus on that sharp, upward climbing red line for the EuroLeague. That's not just a line on a graph, that's a philosophy in action. It shows this massive, consistent increase in ball movement and team play. The NBA's line, meanwhile, is way flatter. So let's break down this European symphony. It is all about structure. Coaches are like conductors, and the players are expected to run these super complex plays with precision. It's not crazy for a top team to have a playbook with 30 or 40 set plays. The real emphasis is on tactical discipline and what players do without the ball to create openings for the team. And then you have the American solo. This is a whole different beast. The faster pace, that open lane we talked about, it all encourages fast breaks and transition offense. The systems are often simpler, built around a pick and roll or an isolation play that's designed to give a star player the space and freedom to use their individual brilliance to beat their defender. It's all about creating and exploiting that one-on-one advantage. So this all leads to the big question, right? Why? Why do these two completely different styles even exist? Well, the answer isn't really found in the pro game at all. The answer lies in how the players themselves are made. This whole philosophical divide is born from two fundamentally different systems for player development. And this brings us right back to Kobe. His frustration was aimed squarely at the American grassroots system, especially AAU basketball. He argued that it just prioritizes showcasing individual talent in these weekend tournaments over actually teaching kids the fundamentals of how to play the game. And he wasn't alone. Mark Cuban said something pretty similar, drawing a really stark contrast. He basically said that in the European system, kids are learning how to play basketball, while the American system can sometimes feel more like a competition to see who can make the best highlight reel for social media. So let's look at that European model because it's so different. It's a professional structure from the bottom all the way to the top. First, coaches have to be certified by the federation. The clubs follow a unified curriculum. And, this is the key, the most talented teenagers, we're talking 14 to 18-year-olds, they get integrated directly into the professional club. They're practicing and playing against grown men. The focus is on building a complete, all-around basketball player, not just finding the best athlete. But here's where the story gets really, really interesting. For as long as these two worlds have been separate, that's just not the case anymore. In today's globalized basketball world, they are borrowing from each other, adapting, and influencing one another more than they ever have before. And honestly, this chart shows that convergence perfectly. Just look at the trend in three-point attempts. Both lines are just rocketing straight up. This isn't an NBA thing or a European thing anymore. This is a global basketball thing. It's driven by analytics, and both sides of the Atlantic have figured out the same simple math. Shooting more three-pointers helps you win games. And this exchange is a total two-way street. You're seeing European teams play with more pace now, giving their star players more freedom to just go create. At the same time, the NBA has been completely transformed by European concepts of ball and player movement, and of course, by the European players themselves, guys like Jokic, Doncic, and Antetokounmpo, who are bringing their unique, high IQ, fundamentals-first skill set and just dominating the league. So this leaves us with one last fascinating question. As these two worlds keep blending together, are we eventually headed towards one single global style of basketball? Or will those fundamental differences, the symphony versus the solo, will they always be there, pushing and pulling the sport into an even more exciting future? It's definitely something to think about the next time you're watching a game, no matter which side of the ocean it's on.